It's
Okay.
not a matter of where he grips it.
You can grip it by the husk. It's not a matter of where he grips it. Anyway.
Around first,
All right,
you don't carry
so
a
we're
1
recording.
pound coconut. Okay.
I'm Brian Kynes. I'm the DM for this and the Tales of Ulran storyline. To this side of me, whatever the hell that is to you guys watching, that is Alex. Alex plays several different characters, but her main one is Oma, a human native of Spearhead Isles. She is a summoner and a spirit walker, which is a custom class that we created for her. Very interesting character. Hopefully we'll see some of that good shit here in a little bit. Below her is Danny McGuffey. I'm a partner in crime for a long time on this. Danny plays so many people. We'll have him introduce him as we get into this. The main one tonight will be Bastille, the elven rogue / warlock of the, what kind of patron is it now? Is it called the celestial patron?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, which has been very interesting. And to his side, below me, is Ron. Ron is playing a unique character to our game. He's playing an avian, which isn't an elf. It's just a winged being. Human-looking in appearance, with a little bit larger eyes than your typical person, a little thinner, and he's a very ancient being. And your character appears to be in their late mid-60s, I believe.
Yeah.
And is a cleric, and his name is Ignatious. To give a little recap, and for all this kind of talk openly about, we've been playing our game in almost a movie mode, to where two folks may be doing one thing in the city, then we'll cut scene, go to what everybody else is doing, or in this case, Danny just switches personalities midstream. And then we'll get back to it. When combat happens, if it happens, depending on that, we go to a share screen. We're using Zoom for this. And I like it. I think it's been good. What do you guys think? The battle maps and stuff? Cool. Good deal. If they like it, I like it. So it's all good. Last time we were around Danny and Ignatius, or Bastille and Ignatius, there is a king of this city that we're in. His name is King Omadon. And King Omadon has befriended Bastille's character to a degree. He has begun to trust him, understands that he is a part of many different things that, although he likes to turn a blind eye to in the city, he knows that are necessary. Because if there is going to be a shady side to the city, at least he needs to know that it's controlled by people with some kind of moral code. And that is a deal that the king has been able to make. King Omadon has two right-hand men that serve him. One is Valimar, or the Grey Knight, which is the physical side of that. And the other name is it Landeris?
Yes.
The court mage. And he is the other side of King Omadon. The king has recently told Danny and Ignatius's character in confidence that there has been a curse laid upon the royal crypts deep beneath the city of New Gemdar, which very few people even know exist. And that they are to put a team together to go down there to stop this corruption. You see, over the last week, Valimar and Landeris have been having to stay by the king's side all night long, as ghostly apparitions and different undead versions of his own ancestors seek out to destroy him every night. The king hasn't had sleep, or any kind of decent sleep, in almost 2.5 weeks now, and has been hiding this from the main public. Bastille was one of the very first people outside of a very tight-knit circle of people very close to the king that's been giving us information. It's a big step in proving his trust to the king, and has asked that Danny's character be very wise in who he selects to go down there. He goes, I don't want to know what happens. It pains me to see the face of ancestors twisted and evil that want my death. And he would send his own right and left down there to do this, but they are very, very valuable to him and must be by his side at all times during this crisis. So Danny's character and Ignatius have been entrusted to find another person or two or whatever they choose to do to go down in there in the crypts underneath the city. And there could be many, many other things down there they're not quite sure about. They're supposed to meet a guide. And where was that, Danny?
The lower gate of the inner castle.
Okay, so the upper layer, once you guys are allowed in, there's a gate there, and then we'll meet you there. Okay, awesome. Okay. In the meantime, Danny has another character, which is named Dayhon and Oma. He looks like a tribal Samoan warrior, tattooed up, and very, he's not much of a barbarian, but he dresses somewhat like a barbarian type character. He's very tribal looking and almost monk-like in his ways. We were going to have him be a monk at first, but once we discussed it, we were able to take a fighter class and alter it to a degree to work with what Danny had envisioned for this character. Very interesting guy, big, tall, dark-skinned, very Samoan-looking person. And then he and Alex, which is Oma, are together, and they are traveling to the upper layers of the city of New Gemdar. There's a whole upper part of this called Overwatch. Correct? Is that what it was called? Overwatch, yep. I believe, yes. And there is an airship dock there called the Lai Lung, and they are both part of the crew of this place. And the ship captain, his name is Aeolus Lunari. We decided that if he was portrayed by any actor, it'd be the gentleman that plays Lucifer in the Lucifer TV series. Very debonair, almost British accented wise, very pirate steampunk looking character. And he is the captain of the ship. Now, Oma has just bailed Dayhon out of jail because Dayhon started a bunch of shit earlier, so she can make a escape from some people that were prowling around her that were very unfavorable and know her from her past, and she thinks would do her harm if they knew that she was here. We won't get into all that because that'd be a long one. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start, because Alex is baking stuff, because we have lives too. She'll have to go check on some things in a little bit. So we'll go ahead and start with Danny and Ignatius. For you folks watching, we have some pretty heavy role play. I'm not great at doing voices, but I like telling stories. So we will give brief bits of the best interpretations we can of how these characters should sound. And you just have to be nice to us, is all I can say. Okay? So Danny, you guys are at the Drunken Mug on the lower level of the city. And the druid character, the silver and dark-haired elven druid named Jadite, has just laid out a plan for you guys, talking about how everything that all these different members of our loose-knit party, or this group of allies and companions that we have through all the NPCs and all the different characters that we play, we all have common goals. And if we can focus on them and work together towards them, we're going to come to a common goal. And he laid out how it's all tied together, almost like the end of a crime scene investigation show. And it was pretty interesting, the points that he made to us. With that, Jadite leaves the table that you guys are currently sitting at. Okay? To set the scene, and mind you, it's been quite a while since we played last time. Kind of help me through the details here. It was a busy night, wasn't it?
It was just after the big arena, everything. So actually right about now, Dayhon would just be coming out of the prison, be like right around midnight. And it's after the behemoth battles. Drayden set across from Bastille. Then Ignatius is by Bastille's side, and Rainlore is at the table with him.
Rainlore's at the table with him too. For those of you that don't know, Rainlore Darkstride is a character that I play, and as I'm DMing as well. He is a centurion character, a centaur. We call them centurions here. But he is going through training, and he has a certain item on him that lets him walk on 2 legs. He looks like a regular 2-legged humanoid. Looks like a human for all intents and purposes right now. But as he walks crippled and slowly and frailly because he's not used to these legs. And Rainlore is what you would call like a dark stalker, like ranger type character, very mystical. He's almost like a hunter of the dead. And he is very good friends with Danny's character and is getting to know Ignatious rather well. So when I'm doing him, his mentality is based on Aquaman from the Justice League movies. He has that kind of gruff, no shit, man, kind of way about him. Says eccentric things, kind of quick, but very wise when it comes to dealing with things of the dark world and demonic possession and things like that. So if I'm ever sounding gruff and swell my chest up a little bit, that's because I'm conjuring the Aquaman to play this character. As Jadite leaves the table, he picks up the book. Remember, he was turning the book and showing you all different things that he had drawn in sketches. He had drawn lines of the sentinel trees of Hamelsbyre far to the south. He drew a picture of the Trent that is lost down there, that we are supposed to go and remind the Trent of its duties because it had been lost. Its name was Parthon. Do you guys remember that? It was a watcher. It was supposed to be watching over the sentinel trees of Hamelsbyre to keep them alive and protect them. And there's a woman that was in this comedy club, or sorry, the Hunters Guild, and she is from what Jadite has told us, she is a Dyrad satire mix, and she is the leader of this Hunters Guild. And her name was, as soon as I can find it here, if one of you guys find it before I do, yell it out. Semphyra. Semphyra. And Jadite's concern was that Semphyra seems to be fading. Semphyra usually has decorative leaves and flowers in her hair like many druids do. She is very close to nature because of her Dyrad heritage. But she has been very ill lately and is to the point now where she can't hide it anymore. Okay? And Jadite has said that he needs to travel to the south to find out why the curse in the land of Thornwood seems to be moving northward at an increasing rate. And there's sentinel trees of Hamelsbyre that were planted by the wood elves there long ago are starting to wither and fade. And if they do, we don't know what kind of darkness will be unleashed from Thornwood, which is on the southern boundary of that. And it seems like somehow her being sick is connected directly to what the trees of Hamelsbyre are going through. And he has connected that to Ural's quest. But at the time being, Danny, you know that you have something more immediate that you need to tend to for the king. So after Jadite has laid all this out and he has taken his book and closed it and left the table, I will play Rainlore, be your characters, and I will start this off simply by looking across. Rainlore looks at your character, Danny, and says, you buying all that?
Looks around and he says, recently I talked with my patron and he said, live my life, it'll come to pass. So I said we take it a moment at a time, and this moment looks like we should probably rescue the king's ancestors, if you know what I'm saying.
I do. Seems like there's more than one stairway leading to the top in this thing. He looks over at Ignatius. And at this point, had you already asked his character to join you, or you have yet to throw that on him?
Ignatius has already read it.
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay, and like I say, and you've already asked Rainlore if he wants to be a part of this, or you hadn't picked your third yet?
Actually, Drayden, and Ignatius had read it.
That's right. I remember
And,
that sitting around the table.
Yeah.
Okay. So Drayden stands up. Drayden, for everyone watching, is a Felidae. He is a lion-like humanoid, a cat person-like character, and he's a monk. Drayden stands up, and Drayden has had severe damage to his throat. He talks in a very dry, cracked voice and has to clear his throat, and talks in a whisper, almost the voice of, I think it's Christopher Lambert when he plays in Highlander and plays Raiden in the amazing Mortal Kombat movie, which could have been much better. He has a very whispery voice. He has to clear his throat all the time. He looks to you, Bastille, and he comes over and he says this kind of softly to you so no one else hears. But he gets down, he puts his heavy hand on the table beside you and bows down. And he says, the tournament can wait. Do this thing. Secure a place in the city. If you need me, if you don't come back, where should I go?
I don't know. It looks like we're going to be under this city somewhere.
Okay.
Maybe those passageways we traveled before, somewhere in there. More importantly, he looks over to Roselia. If I don't come back, make sure she's okay. And he slides a coin pouch over to him.
How much is in that, Danny?
That would probably be the, let's say half of what he's carrying in gold, so 50 gold.
Okay, I'll carry it on. Okay. He looks at that. And he knows that you would never have to pay him for something like this. You two have been through an awful lot together. And, you know, there's been a time before when he actually saved Roselia's life. He looks at you, honored that you would ask him to do that.
For her.
He gets it. He gets it. Okay, he nods to you. And he says, I hope to give this back to you soon. Stands up.
I hope to double it.
As you would. He looks down and he says, Rainlore, watch over them. Stay clear of the darkness. Rainlord just kind of looks up at him and he says, you know it. It's where I'm at my best. We got this. He looks at the table across to you two, and he looks at Ignatius. He says, hell of a first week, huh, man?
I laugh and chuckle and tell him, you know, this is what I'm here for. I wanted to finally experience what I've read about. You guys have not been a disappointment.
He goes, no, that's reassuring. Kind of smiles sarcastically. And he goes to stand up, but he does a little bit abruptly, and you see him kind of wince and strain as he pushes up on that large lance that he carries, that he uses when he is a centaur, but he uses it as almost like a walking stick. He pushes up on it, and he says, oh yeah, not leaving that. And he grabs a little bit of that wine that Ignatius gave the recipe to, and he slugs that back sloppily, wiping off the chin, the long black hair that he has hanging off this kind of braided beard that he has. And it's almost comical to you, Ignatius, that people enjoy it this way. You know, if someone drank wine like that where you're from, especially this shit, everyone would be holding their breath and just gasping. But at this point, getting to know these people, It almost would bring a smile to your face. I can imagine that it's being enjoyed by lowlanders in this way, the way true drinks are meant to be celebrated. So, having said that, he goes, he looks at you and he says, "So I'm meeting you at the gate. How long from now? What kind of time you need?"
Say, looks over at Roselia. He says, hour and a half, 2.
Okay. Roselia, which is a love interest of Danny's character, she would appear to be Hispanic in nature. If you've ever seen Daredevil, the TV series, the great TV series that was on HBO. Oh, no, it was Netflix. Sorry. She looks like the actress that played Elektra on that. She is a barmaid here, but that's just a cover for what she truly does and is. And she is dressed almost like a swashbuckling pirate and a barmaid combined. Very feisty woman that Danny is quite fond of, and she's sitting at the table too, invested in his future and his well-being. And again, as I got lost there a minute describing her, Danny, what is it you say to her again, please?
She's not on, so he's gonna kind of tell her that he take care of tonight. So once again, she'll be sleeping alone.
She gives you a long, cold stare that would almost be comical and is meant to look funny to everyone else. But you see something in her eye that is beyond that. You know her better than that. And you know her rough exterior and the person she portrays to be. And you see a wince in one of her eyes. And you know that she grows tired of the danger that you're in all the time. She may act like it's fun for her and exciting, but lately it's been a lot. And you can see the crack in her dam. Okay? Roll a perception check for me.
Perception. 19.
Okay. You can see her knuckles getting white with her hand, which isn't typical of her. And you can see where the tattoo used to be that was faded. You see the spot where it used to be, but it's not there. And she rubs it with her thumb. And she puts her hand and reaches out for your hand on top of the table to hold your hand for a moment. What are you doing?
Reaches out as well.
Okay. Ignatius, this would be one of the first times that you've seen Bastille actually physically acknowledge their relationship since you've been there. It's almost like you're being privy to something that normally they keep pretty private. Okay. And it's almost like the two are in their own little time zone for a moment. Nothing else seems to matter to those two at the moment. And you can't help but how perceptive you are to hear these things. Ignatius's character and his race, they can hear and see things almost like an actual bird. They have amazing things that in a city like this would be hard to turn off. And as she looks at you, she says with a pleasantly disguised smile, she says, "Don't worry yourself. I'll watch after Drayden while you're gone." And she smiles.
When she does, he takes the other 50 gold, not his platinum, and he slides that across, and he says, make sure he's taken care of if something would happen.
And I hope to double this at well. The game doesn't wait for you. And there's another one being held tomorrow night up on the rooftop. I'll save you a chair. And she told you, as you go to smile and walk away, she pulls you to her for a minute with that hand and doesn't let you just get up real quick. And she goes, "I'm dealing you in." She's telling you, you better be there. Okay? She takes your hand and pulls it up and gives it a kiss real quick, and she turns away from you before she can begin to tear up and goes back to doing her job and freaks right into character in a very impressive yet sad kind of way, and starts her flirtatious voice that you can hear shake just a little bit as she automatically starts grabbing up empty mugs as if she's been looking at them through the back of her head the whole time she's been sitting at this table. She grabs up 2 or 3 and is just shaking her butt and being her flirtatious self. But you know she turned away from you quickly because she's trying to hide an emotion. She doesn't want to be on your conscience. Okay? With that, she goes across the table. Ignatius, you would see this unfold. And you, of all people, would appreciate the poeticness of it. The strain that an adventurer's life takes on the things and moments that try to give them some kind of normalcy. With that, I will leave the table open to Danny and Ignatius to talk about where they would like to go first or what they would like to do. I'd like to make a couple notes, Ron, that you have a place there that you are allowed to stay at in the city, up by the gates. You guys could go there first. Danny, there are many places you know that you might want to stop by first before you go there. Okay, and things you may want to do. And I will not try to interrupt this by rolling a d20s and having you guys run into shit unless you want that. Typically, when we play and these folks go from one place to the other, I will roll a 1d20. 1 means they got there safely, no problem. 20 means they run into some kind of dumb shit that's going to happen. We just make it up depending on how high that roll is. I will only get that out if you guys want it, because you've been through a lot and you have goals. So the 2 of you, Danny, as she walks away, you see Ignatius giving her a long look. And then you 2 have a moment here. Drayden has left. Rainlore has went and taken care of some things. He is going to meet you at the gate in about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. And I will say you 2, now that Roselia has left the table, are the only ones left sitting there. The place is busy, but it's slowing down. People are good and drunk at this point, and the music is still playing, but it is softly playing. I think Roland the Magnificent was here, was he not?
Mm-hmm.
Playing ballad.
So,
okay.
Yeah, as that goes, Bast shifts his cloak off to the side so Ignatius can see he's wearing that fine avian armor. Give me just a second. I've got a dog I've got to attend to.
Hey, life happens. Okay, while we're taking that moment, let's go ahead and talk to Alex for just a minute. So, Alex, Oma and Dayhon are in that alleyway, okay? And these shadow imps, or whatever these are, that came out and began to attack you and him out of the darkness, out of the streets. This place, you just can't believe how dangerous this place has been lately for you. And it didn't used to be this way. You see this hard black iron sickle-like weapon that has been left. It seems like the only physical part left of this creature being defeated by you. You had your eagle that you had summoned out. Her name was beginning with an M. Do you remember what the eagle's name was?
Give me a minute.
If not, that's fine. But I remember she had a name. I'm giving you guys a quick scene here real quick, then we'll get back to the other thing. I'm going to you and Oma real fast. What was the name of her, Alex?
Mina.
Mina, okay. So I don't think you had dispersed Mina yet. She was still hovering up. And I would say she would have flown on top of one of those fountains that the actual shadow imps seem to have hid behind before. And after using her scorching ray and casting it down and defeating several of these creatures for you, she would rest on top of the statue and dim down her flames to look just like a normal large-sized eagle as these guards approached to see what all the fuss and commotion was about. The guards were 2 polearm-wielding guards dressed in the black and gold, the colors of New Gemdar. Their armor reminiscent of what a hawk looks like. They would have shoulder pads that would be shaped shaped in the top of a hawk's head with the beak pointing down, and their helmets would have visors with open slots at a V, and they would have, these are lower level guards. The higher level guards that are in the city have larger plumes of metal and finely crafted feathers that come off their helmets. The highest ones actually have real feathers. These have just very little V's on their helmets and embroidered feathers etched into the side of their helmets. They are accompanied by one mage, a guard mage that is with the two of them, which has a staff and is also dressed in the black and gold, the colors of the city, as they approach. The last time we were with you two, the shadow imps had whispered many different things in this crazy, insane kind of voice. And one of the things they said, which was very, very solemn to you guys, was that Danny overheard one of them whispering, "You'll be the murderer now. You'll be the murderer." And it seemed like they left these crude devices, these black iron sickles. They left them at your feet, Danny, conveniently, and Alex at your feet too when they disappeared. And it seems like one of these shadowy figures had jumped into the body of someone that they were attacking. Remember this? Now, Danny, if I'm not mistaken, your character at the last minute cast a spell that drove these shadow imps out of what seemed to be their prey, which was a normal, large hatted, wearing person, a citizen of New Gemdar that was drunk coming home and was overwhelmed and attacked by these creatures, which is what you guys run into because you're old and 19, which was epic, and was what started all this. And at first, they took over the body and enveloped this character. It looked at you two maliciously and grinned and wanted to start yelling, "Help, help, I've been assaulted," framing you guys for whatever this was. Danny went over quickly, did a restoration, or forget which spell it is you cast, but
Used Aura of the Phoenix.
yeah, Aura of the Phoenix.
He used Aura of Rest. Yeah, which was from his primal aspects.
And it drove those shadow imps out of the person. It worked successfully, which was super good play on your part. So now the three guards show up, okay? The mage is the one doing all the talking on whispered words, as his hood seems to be enveloped and fluffed up a bit by some kind of mystical wind that seems to be puffing out his sleeves. He's preparing something. The guards come up. They're within 15 foot of you guys. The pole arms drop with a snap. The large black and gold banners that hang from them hang rigid and blow in the same wind and wake that comes from this mage. The one that seems to be the, I would say higher ranking than them, the leader of them, if you will. And they say, "What has happened here?" He says, "What have you been doing here?" And it looks at you and her both. The wizard seems to be holding some spell at bay. Remember,
Dayhon
saw that large field in front of them, where it looked like some kind of rune that was flat, one-dimensional, that appeared in front of them, then vanished. So they have some kind of barrier. Dayhon, what are you saying?
Dayhon would have still been in that phoenix stance, and he drops it as the flames kind of fall away. He steps forward, ignoring the people behind him, and he asks the gentleman that he rescued, "Can you stand?"
The guy, and I don't know if we quite described him. We didn't really get into it. He's just a very flamboyant, looks like he could be some kind of bardish merchant of some kind with a large hat that's feathered, that had a feathered hat. As he reaches down and picks up the feather, almost like he's been shell-shocked, and is sticking it back into his helmet just out of muscle memory, and looks at you and is nodding. He says, I can speak. And he holds himself for a minute as if he's been violated somehow. He doesn't understand what's going on. My daughter's bringing me dinner. She's trying to be sneaky. Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate you. Because in real D&D, people eat. We play during dinner, don't we, guys? Some of us bake. Some of us eat dinner. And then some of us, like Ron, have computer problems. Shit is real. Shit is real. You're getting the real deal. Okay. Blue collar D&D. So with that, he seems like he's just now coming to grips with what has happened. Okay? And all of a sudden he snaps his head and looks around. The one guard walks over, breaking from the pack of three, puts his hand on him and says, "Are you all right, sir? Can you talk to me about what's happened here? We saw eldritch magic from the arena. Have you been hurt?" As he brings his hands up where he's been searching his body, you can see a little bit of blood, but it's nothing more than just flesh wounds where the creature had bit him and started to attack him. But because of you two and your intervention, he's living. He goes, "I'll be fine. I'll if my wife sees these clothes, she'll murder me." He looks over and he makes eyes to Oma. And he looks up at that eagle on top of the statue and he looks at you. And he just says the words "thank you," but he doesn't say them out loud. He just lips them. And you can see what he said to you, Oma. With that, Danny, does Dayhon intervene here in any way? Or what is it you're saying at this point? The mage still looking to you for some kind of answer.
Is he stood up yet?
Mm-hmm. He stood up, grabbed the feather,
Okay.
touching himself, looking around, having the talk with the guard.
Looks over at the guard. He says, "I was just released from Bardor's presence. Forgive me, I'm trying to kind of get this."
And smile. One goes, "Bardor." And you can see a grin come underneath the visor helmet of the one guard as if they know him too. And the mage looks at you, goes, "Sounds like you've had a hell of a night."
He's an honored elder.
Okay,
but as we come out, there was, I don't know what you'd call them. They were like imps, but of shadow. When you struck them down, they make you blind.
And looks at you. Total, I've rolled an 18. Danny, I don't roll a. Are you bullshitting here? You rolled an 18. If you can outroll that, you can.
No.
Okay.
No, he's just telling the story as they came out, what he saw and how they got into it.
And he is discerning that the large Samoan-looking warrior, the mystic warrior in front of him, is being honest and sincere. Yet he's not casting any kind of spell on you to find this truth. He is just perceiving.
I've not seen anything in the city like this. It's like they were made of nothing. The only thing solid was their teeth, their eyes, and these. And he points to the sickle.
He looks now at the sickle.
Quite vicious.
What'd you say, Alex?
They were quite vicious.
They were quite vicious.
The one fellow.
As you say that, the other guard to his side, the one has his hand on this person that was the victim, trying to soothe them and calm them down. The mage looks over at the guard and nods to that. The other guard walks around, looking at you through the visor. You can just see the white and black eyes through it. As he reaches down slowly and picks up that dark knife, that sickle.
When he does, Dayhon would step back and be like, "I don't know if I'd touch it."
He looks back and the mage holds his hand out like this. The knight where the guard comes over and places it in his hand, and he picks it up. And he holds on to it for a minute, and he closes his eyes. Everything seems to go still for just a moment. You can almost hear your heartbeat. At that point, he opens his eyes back up again. They're solid white. And he holds the thing and he seems to squeeze it. And as he does, the blade turns to ash in his hand. And he keeps a little bit of it in his palms like this. Opens up a pouch and pours it into his side. He looks over to the other guard and he says, "This is just exactly like the other ones. See this man home. I have to speak with these two privately for now. Once you've made your report, make sure that Valimar is given knowledge of what's transpired here tonight. Be safe and be careful." As the mage holds his hand up to his chest, the other two hold their hand that way too, and then they escort that person that you saved off into the distance as they are still kind of bewildered as to what transpired. You two are left standing there with this mage, guard, if you will. It's weird to mix those two words together, but that's pretty much what he is. He is part of the guard here in the city. And he looks to you all. I will say that this mage, I will say this mage is human, okay, with a very pointed widow's peak kind of hairstyle, eccentric features. I would say this person, if I had to say an actor that would play this NPC, what do you think, Danny? Pointed nose, eccentric features, widow's peak, hairdo. We've used so many people. Who the hell's left at this point? What's that?
What kind of age range is he?
Give it whatever.
You could go with like the old Bela Lugosi with the widow's peak.
The one that played the vampire.
Way back. Let's
go with that. Let's say it looks like old Bela Lugosi without the fangs, okay? Has that kind of look, the widow's peak, the sharp eyebrows, the very intense stare of the deep crevices. Almost has a rolled tongue kind of accent to them. And speaks to you about you've done battle with these creatures. And you've seen what they are capable of. And a victim has survived this night because of you. How is it that you dispatched of these creatures so easily? And he looks to both of you for answers, back and forth.
Primarily flame and light-based magic.
Okay.
To help them.
He says to you, a wise choice for creatures made of shadow. He says to you, and he looks over at you, and he looks at your hands, and he says, and you have conjured something as well. And you have the feeling, I want you to roll an intelligence check here, Danny. Just a regular intelligence check.
14 plus intelligence. Oh, wrong character. He'd have got a great score off that.
Oh, right, yeah. Let's use Bastille's intelligence. That'd be great.
Yeah, 16 total.
Okay, so 16 is not bad. As you go to answer this question, before the words leave your mouth, you feel as if this line of questioning is not being exactly clear as to its intent. Something's fishy about it. Not in an evil way, but something, you just get a weird sense looking at this person. He showed a crack in his persona. Something, as you investigate and you're thinking about this in your head, about this line of questioning and what you're used to these guards doing, he's got another thing here in mind. Having said that, how do you answer his question?
What is it you really want to know?
He looks over at the bird on top of the fountain, the large eagle, looks back to her, looks back to you, and he says, I'm distinguishing whether or not you've been capable of the different acts of violence that we have found tonight. This is not the only instance of this occurrence. And I will be glad to say that flame and brute force are some of the very few things uninvolved in tonight's mysterious occurrences. Doing my job. He looks at you.
As well.
And you say,
Up until about 10 minutes ago, I was with Bardor.
okay. And he says,
but if you're wondering how, and he stops for a second, he says, do you have a family?
roll charisma check for intimidation.
Ooh, really good. 17 plus 7 for that one.
Okay, natural 4. So when you do that, you see the Adam's apple kind of go, doop, okay? And he looks at you, losing a little bit of his harsh exterior, and says to you, I have a family. We've been here since I was born, warrior.
He would say, little sisters. And he smiles. And he looks at him and he says, you want to know how I dispatched him? And he rolls out, and when he does, he forms his hands up into like the talons, and as he does, that fire comes up.
Okay. As you do that, you see him kind of shudder and take a step back a little bit, but you don't see him doing anything more defensively. You see the sheen of that barrier between you and him seem to reflect a little bit of something, almost like something is invisible, but a light is shown over top of it. You know what I mean? And you're reminded that there's a reason why he feels somewhat confident talking to us, and it's still there. And the shimmer of that on that gives him a little bit of comfort. And he looks to you and he goes, don't linger out here anymore tonight. He goes, we have already used almost everyone we have available in trying to track down where these shadow imps, as you've called them, come from. But if you are on your way home, the kingdom, Omadon, Balamar, and myself would be very grateful if you'd show them no mercy within our walls. I'm at a point now where I have... Go ahead.
Does the Bruce Lee thing, and he looks to him and he says, what do you know of these imps? How else can we best them, and what summons them?
He goes, they don't naturally occur in our city. They've been summoned by a spell. The only thing that worries us is that our court mage Landeris cannot pin down the exact location of this, which is rare. That's why we're here to investigate, to find out where these things come from. They are not charmed or commanded, pray tell, but when they are summoned, they have a purpose.
And has there been any of this in Overwatch?
I don't know. We plan to have a meeting with, and what was the name of Val Kilmer's Russian guy up there? What's his name?
Trevadale.
Trevadale, right?
Yep.
Okay. We plan to have council with Trevadale in the morning to see if that could be the origin of this. He says,
He nods and he looks and he says, Oma, we've got to get up to the La Lung.
Indeed. As fast as possible.
As you say that, the eagle comes down off the statue and perches and lands on your shoulder, emanating a very low blue and red aura around it of the blue and red flames that usually encircle this thing. It seems to have little wisps of that encircling its body. And he looks at you, a little bit amazed, but more relieved, and says, be careful. He's at a loss for words, and he looks to the streets, and he goes to walk briskly behind the pathway that the other two have taken when they were taking that person that you saved off into another part of the city. He walks briskly and with urgency, almost militantly, off in their direction. You two are left there on the street alone. You can see that they have also collected up the other black iron sickle that was over there. You have to assume the guard picked it up as he was carrying to that bard merchant type individual, and he strolls off. So Danny, thoughts on this? Where is Dayhon's mind right now?
Right now, his mind would be getting Oma back to the ship because of how he feels about her. And with what's going on,
Okay.
things that pop out that he doesn't understand, he would want to get her back.
Okay. And Oma, you have Mina at your disposal. So she will be out as long as you keep concentration on her, and she can talk to you passively. She can help look out for things for you, and she will be available to you until you dismiss her or she is injured or defeated in battle. As you say that, are you trying to choke back a yawn, or what are you doing? That was a hell of a face you made. Oh my God. She's been possessed by a shadow imp. What's shit. No, I get it. So what are you wanting to do, Oma? Are you just simply wanting to go with Danny and make your way up to the airship as fast as possible? Or you want to do something, an interaction with your summoned spirit? What would you like to do at this point?
I'd like to send Mina to scout ahead to make sure there aren't any more of those creepy little things
Well, okay.
in our path towards the Lylong.
Okay, you can do that. As you tell her this, in however manner speaking you wish to, she looks to you. She says, I will keep an eye unto the shadows to make sure you have safe passage. She says to you, as she looks up again, her eye kind of flares up a little bit, and with blue streaming tendrils of flame, more blue now than they are red, the eagle takes up into the sky and goes towards Skywell, which is the large tower-like structure that takes you from the base level of the city up to the top. Okay, with that, you and Dayhon are trying to make your way the rest of the way up towards the Lylung with no issue. Just for shits and giggles, Danny, roll me a 1d20.
At least it's not a constitution check.
You're right, yeah.
Oh no, Dayhon's solid with those.
What'd you get?
No, that's right. Wrong character.
What'd you get?
An 8.
Okay, so everyone watching, we have an honor system where I like to roll physical dice. I like to look at them. I like to collect them. I've got my own little tray. I've got an awesome tower that my daughter's made me out of foam and stuff. It's really cool. There are a lot of people to play online like this and use an automatic roller and stuff like that. They're great, but I feel it takes away something. So we work on an honor system. And I remind everyone that ones can be just as fun as 20s when we do this. Mind you, now, the optional rules we use, we're capable of some pretty high numbers and shit sometimes, but then again, so isn't everybody else. Not just us, but the creatures that try to kill us constantly. So you're going to hear, like, Danny may go a whole time and not roll below 20. That kind of shit happens every once in a while, but we all are part of an honor system, and we don't like, as the dice create fun where maybe there wasn't any to begin with. So having said that, I will ask them to roll random dice if there's no action, just so they can be a part of what's going on. We do that a lot in our game. Okay, so with an 8, I will gladly say that you actually make it through Skywell and back to the airship safely. We will pick up with you in just a few moments. Well, probably longer than that. Whereas I'm going to have you guys entering the ship, and Aeolus will probably meet and greet you there, but we'll see. I'll start with you walking up the ramp to the airship that lays adrift, almost like a docked boat, but only in the sky, up on the docks of Overwatch. Now, and was it called Overwatch, Danny?
Overwatch is the top. The bar is the crow's nest,
Crow's Nest. Okay, that's right.
and Hawk's Nest is another name for Overwatch.
Okay. Okay.
I think the guards call it Hawk's Nest,
Okay.
but everyone else calls it Overwatch.
I like it. Okay. So now let's go ahead and take back for just a minute, and we will shift back to Bastille and Ignatius's characters. Okay. Ignatius, I'll go ahead and start with you. I like to get everyone involved. I like to hear what Ignatius has to say about shit. You guys had the table to yourselves for the first time. Okay.
All right. I look at I'd look over at Bastille and would ask him what he thinks his next moves are before we head off and meet Rainlord.
He leans across the table and he says, "How would you like to meet the finest smith in New Gemdar? I've got to return something to him."
I said, that sounds very intriguing. I said, I'd say, but I think first, after the last couple of days, we helped an angel, into a construct, had a meal with the Yeti tribe after saving their chieftain, made friends with centaurs and other beings, fought a behemoth, met a king. I've left my home, may possibly never return. I think I'm going to have a drink.
We could take one with us.
Sounds like a plan then.
So we're doing a little street drinking. Okay.
Yeah.
I like the corruption
Yeah,
you put upon Ignatius. I like he went from this cleric archaeologist to a street drinker because of what you've done to him, Danny.
Like I said, I was kind of going over here, with what we've done in just the last couple of days of his life.
Yeah.
And it just, sitting down at this table, it just kind of all, he's like, I'm going to have a drink and then I'm going to go on a quest for the king. It's like.
What would the commercial say? Action packed. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's like at this point, he's like, why not? Quest from the king. Sure.
Right on.
With that,
what's the Constitution saving throw, Ron? Ron throws her back. And are you doing this sophisticated or are you throwing it back sloppy like Rainmore did?
I think at this point, I'm throwing it back sloppy. When in Rome.
When in Rome, but okay, throw me a Constitution saving throw.
13, and I've got nothing for a modifier for Constitution, so straight up 13.
Okay, Alex, let's have some fun. I want you to roll a DC on the 1d20. So you're rolling a 1d20 and a 1d4. 1d20 is a roll, 1d4 is the modifier. Tell me what your total is. You're rolling for the potency of Ignatius's avian brew.
Okay, so got a 6 and a 2.
8.
Yep.
Okay. You're a champ, buddy. You're feeling
All
good.
right.
You're relaxed. Things are loose. You got your buzz on. You think you can drive, but legally you really shouldn't. So you can fly, but you might get in trouble. You're kind of there. You're feeling your shit. It's eased back a little bit. I want you to write down that your stress level is -2. So remember.
After that, seeing that, Bash chugs his down and then turns the mug over and slams it on the table.
As you say that,
And he looks
everybody
to
goes,
you.
"Hey!" And they start singing that poem about the drunken mug. and why this place is famous for that. Ron, you've never heard this shit, and I wish I had it right in front of me, but there's this poem. The Drunken Mug is named that because one of the co-founders of the place was a dwarf that fought in the Giant Wars that helped create this place and helped fight for its future. And there's this long ode that this dwarf gave on the battlefield as he was wishing his comrades farewell as he laid out looking at many of his friends dying and dead, okay, and had an ale and recited this beautiful poem right off top of his cuff. And when he did, he dropped that mug and he left it to lay there as a memorial to all these fellow dwarves and all the fellow humans and people that had fought in this war. And there were other people there that saw that, including King Omadon himself. And that mug became extremely famous. And he had people rewrite what he said on that battlefield on that day. And to this day, this place has been called the Drunken Mug. And anytime you're done with your ale, you're to slam your ale down like you did on the battlefield that day. And when you do it, every once in a while, it's like, hey, it's like when it's someone's birthday at a Mexican restaurant. They come out and they put the sombrero on you and everyone does their shit, you know. And they recite this poem. And it is mighty. It is well written for a dwarf because of your etiquette and the things that you know of their writings. And you are very surprised that came from their sturdy mind. And with that, there is this great sense of swelling in your guys' chest, this feeling of camaraderie that you are part of something that is great. It comes from this clashing. And as it starts, Roland points at you from the other side as he's up there playing his violin, Danny. And he starts to sing along with you. And he's playing violin to the actual ballad as he's standing up there performing. And his voice is very good and very distinct and stands out above all the others as they recite this poem. And what a hell of a way to exit the place. Good job. Okay. Ignatius, you would see that poem. And I'll look through my old notes and see if I can find it. It was actually pretty good. I just don't know what the hell I did with it. And to make up something on the cuff now will not do it any justice. So, with that, Ignatius is bringing a little wine with him. And you're wanting to head to, and I believe you're wanting to go to, was it?
Tavaster's shop.
Tavaster's shop. Want to make a brief stop in the shop. We will go ahead and do that for you guys real quick. Not real quick. We'll go ahead and do it. And then once we get through that, I will go back to you and Oma. We will describe the boat. And then we will get back to you guys going and finding your guide and possibly entering the crypts tonight. Should be interesting. By the way, is 10 o'clock a good quitting time for everybody tonight, or should it be earlier?
10 o'clock would be the latest I could do.
How about you, Alex?
I have to shoot around 9 o'clock.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and move forward. If you do, you do, because life happens. Okay, Ron, are you good if around 9:45, 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So yeah, we have jobs we have to go to in the morning. So with that, you guys leave and you make for Tavaster's shop. And Ron, have you ever been there? I think you have, haven't you?
Okay.
No, you didn't, because Tampered went last time.
Yeah.
And took the forge. I forget the name of the actual hammer he has.
Yeah.
But you took that.
Yeah, he took that frost axe there to be destroyed.
Right, because that's one that created originally. Okay, good call. Okay.
Right,
So,
but I wasn't with Tampered.
Okay.
So I have not been there. I mean, I've witnessed Ron witnessed you guys go there, but
Right on.
Ignatius not been.
So I would say on the way there, Bast would be telling him, you know, the Warrior's Altar is famous across Ulran.
The Warrior's Altar. Yeah. Go ahead.
Tavaster is unique. He can sense something about a warrior, and if he forges you something, there's a pact you make with him. But in addition to that, he can forge the evil out of a weapon. And the last time he did that for me, it resulted in his shop almost being burned to the ground. and he was injured. And the time before that, he loaned me this cloak for me to test, and I need to return it to him.
Okay. Any response to that, Ignatius?
I'm like, I would like to learn more about this, and is there anything possibly we could pick up there that would aid us in this quest we're about to go on for the king?
Grin. When you say that, look at the grin come on Danny's face. Go ahead, Danny.
If he deems you worthy, there's no telling what that dwarf will give you, or what he'll charge you for it.
True. Good point. Good point. Okay, so with that, and you guys are more than welcome.
But if you're slick enough, you can.
What's that,
He
Danny?
says if you're slick enough, you can always get. He says if you're slick enough, you can always get the court mage to pay for your armor. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, with that, he's talking about Landeris and the very grand person that we've talked about, and we've all said that Landeris, the court mage that works for King Omadon, the folks that watch, he reminds you of the actor that plays the Red Skull, that plays Ulran, that plays Agent Smith. He has that tone to him. His words linger on a long time. He has that kind of speech. Very interesting character. And Danny has had his balls in the clinch many different times. So it's all good. I will go ahead for expedience and say that you guys arrive to the front door of the warrior's altar. Okay? Ignatius, it's really interesting, the architecture in the city of New Gemdar, as it is made to accommodate all the different kinds of people that are here. The overall structure of the place is militant and structured harshly for battle. But the smaller places within are almost done like a fantastic tourist place, whereas elven places have elven architecture. There are people in the city that are here to purposely build things in that way. And the warrior's altar is no exception for Dwarven kind's craftsmanship. You see this really awesome hodgepodge of shops and different buildings that are close together, almost like a strip mall, but each of them have their own unique flavor put into the structure of a militant city with several layers that climb up the mountain. Okay? You get roll me a perception check, Ron.
Mm, 22.
Very good. Two things I want you to notice. One, the smell of an old fire. We've all been there. When you smell a house that caught on fire sometime recently, there's this stinking smell that lingers no matter how hard people have tried to clean it up. You sense that very strongly, and you can see the scar and the flames that have scarred the actual outer wooden large door of this place, and the sign that hangs above and is slowly blowing in the wind and creaking. Mind you, it's like early December here. So there was like what we say, like half an inch of snowfall right now, with a very light fluttering of snow, mostly being blown off of the rooftops. Nothing actually falling from the sky. And it would be creaking with little silver and white sparkles of snow coming down off the sign, and you can look up at it and see it has been burned and damaged as well. Danny, roll a charisma check for me.
18.
Okay, 18. As you notice this, you think back to Danny's description of this place and his words on the way. And as you look over to him, you see that he has a very stone cold stare, not showing emotion, but also not being his normal joking self. That you know from his tale that he feels responsible for this, but he is stowing that emotion away. And it gives you a little respect for him, that he's able to choke that back. And you're seeing the aftermath of what has occurred possibly because of something he's done. Okay? As you see that, you also notice a shimmering, something that moves in the light coming from lanterns and things that are out throughout the city. And it looks like the shimmer of what would be like a small serpent, or almost like a pseudo dragon. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know how to pronounce it. So if you're watching this video, pseudo dragon. Yeah, because the P is silent because I'm a dumbass. Persuado dragon. With my phone, I will make a call. So anyway, sometimes shit's just how it is, you know. We're all good. So, it looks like something like that is wrapped up around the top of the sign and seems to look at you for just a moment, and its head kind of cocks quickly, almost in an avian way, like a bird's would, that you're very familiar with. Its eyes flash real quick as it looks at you. What are you doing? It looks like it's trying to be invisible, but you're able to get little pieces of it, and the light reflects off of it in a little bit of a weird way, and you're able to make out what it is. Doesn't seem threatening, but there is something there. It looked right at you and blinks. You see its tongue come out for just a minute to taste the air and go back in.
I would kind of look over to see if Bastille is paying any attention to it at all. And
I'm gonna say, go ahead.
Okay. I was saying if he's ignoring it or whatever, I'm gonna kind of keep a half eye on it, but not really do anything.
Okay, Danny, I want you to roll me a perception check with disadvantage. Real time. This guy's got to go to the bathroom. I'll be back in just a second. Okay. Roll that for me, and I'll be right back.
Oh, that's actually hard to read on that clouded dice. I think that's a... Okay, that's a 12, so it'd be a 22 because I have expertise, or a 14.
Record time, and washed my hands because I am a conscious person. That's right. I'd only said happy birthday to me one time, but I was able to wash them, so it's all good. What'd you roll, Danny?
With the disadvantage was 144. Actually, it was 14.
You suck at life. Okay, so 14. Because Ignatius, you see him in this distant stare, not showing emotion to the door and the memory of what happened here. He is focused on that memory and does not seem to notice what you have noticed.
Okay. I am going to just, like I said, kind of keep an eye on it, see if I see it, you know, move anyway aggressively. Otherwise, I'm just going to, you know, let it be.
Okay. Danny, you have arrived. Ignatius is standing there and just seems to be out looking at things like he typically does. Ignatius really takes in everything he's witnessing. As you share a brief moment, you see the flash in memory of that dragon hybrid-like bounty hunting character that you did battle with right here. It was one of the hardest fights of your life. Close your eyes for just a minute and remember it almost took you down. But you pulled it together and were able to defeat the creature, but at a great cost. You go ahead and enter Tavaster's shop.
He puts his hand on the door, and then he remembers Dwarven custom. And before he knocks, he just goes ahead and walks in and says hello in Dwarvish.
Okay. So as you do that, you see that the creature has not done anything wrong and just keeps on looking around and looking at you and sticking its tongue out every once in a while and tasting the air. And it seems to be looking almost like a guard dog almost would. As the door opens up, you see fuming heat come out from the grand door, and you look in and you hear almost the same kind of things that the gnomes would work on. You hear clockwork, you hear stone grinding, you hear mechanisms turning, you see heat, and you sense a magical energy in this place that you have yet to sense in this land. Okay, which you could not sense on the other side of the wall until this door was opened, which is very interesting to you. Your eyebrows and your feathers are going like this, my friend. There's something neat here to be solved, to be seen solved, you know, as we say dumb shit, don't we? Persuado dragon. So anyway, Danny, with that, you walk in, and as you say that loudly, it echoes throughout. You walk in. I will describe this briefly because Ron, you personally have been here many times out of character. This place is called the Warrior's Altar because it houses a very, very unique mechanism that Danny and the other characters aren't even quite sure if Tavaster, the elderly Dwarven smith that lives here and has called this his home, they don't even know if he helped create this, if he is just the steward of this, if this device is of this world. But I would almost describe this to you folks, the best way I could describe is a little bit watered down version of the large planets and constellations that swirl around each other in, I believe her name was Helga, in the Dark Crystal. So when you first watch Dark Crystal and they go into that one woman that has the one eye, there's this large mechanical construct of all the planets swirling around each other. This is similar to that. It is an altar that has 4 different forges. Each one of the forges seems to have a different kind of elemental power inside of it that burns inside of the large stoned off areas. And this thing rotates on a large platform, and all these pieces constantly move as it constantly rotates. And these almost turn in unison, almost like a fair ride. And it's always just, it's a gentle giant. You can feel the movement of this apparatus, but it isn't as loud as you would think. But you can hear little ticks, grinding a stone, large gears interacting and turning. And it is in the middle of this large area. There is a wrapped stone counter that seems to be older than anything else in here. It is very interesting for you, Ignatius, to see the mixture of things that are new here and some things that look like they stood here before the city was even made. It's very curious. Makes you wonder what was brought here and what maybe they uncovered when they built this place. You're not sure. As you look down, you see many different leather scabbards and iron and steel scabbards of all kinds of different weapons laid out on this large round bar that separates the greeting room of this place and the large fireplaces from that large apparatus or the warrior's altar. And I like people's imagination to kind of take over and fill in the blanks. Okay, but you will see also names and tags that hang on parchment papers from all these as if they're orders. Large racks of all kinds of different things. And then you see something else. Ignatius, I'd like you to make a history check. And remember, you have major bonuses to this, do you not, because of your class and things?
I do. And that's the only thing that saved me. Let me look through here real quick.
He said, I do believe in fairies. I do,
yeah. You're trying to start on our previous conversation. You better be careful. Ooh. Insight check. Yeah.
That kid is phenomenal.
Yeah. What'd you get there, Ignatius?
Looks like I have got, hold on, I got one modifier to add to this here, or one roll.
Computers are shutting down. The lights are flickering. Ron's got so many bonuses to add to his roll.
And with all that, I've got 17.
Okay. So, and that's a rough roll. 17's enough to notice something that gives you pause. And looking at all the different tags and things that hangs off all this different weaponry, you almost can't help yourself to walk across the room and reach over the bar, Ron. And you're thinking about reaching out and touching something that you haven't seen, but you've only read about. Okay? There is a process. This is a cleric thing. And you have not seen it done or heard of it being done for a long, long time. Okay? And of all the paper and scriptures and things that are hanging off these different weapons, almost as if they're order forms or receipts or things like that, there is a white ribbon that seems to have some kind of metal, like embroidered writing and things off on it that hangs from a couple different weapons along this wall. And you know that has to do with death rites. That has to do with final rites that a cleric will do for someone if they are trying to resurrect them. And this is a note that many clerics in different kind of packs aren't just allowed to bring people back to life. They aren't allowed to do things that mess with the natural order of things, because if they can just do this freely, what would the world come to? And this is part of something that hasn't happened for a long, long time. And you see these are rites of passage that some cleric of some denomination has tagged to different weapons. And this is almost like a waiting room. There are different people here that maybe they'll be able to be brought back by their tie to these weapons that meant so much to them. Maybe there's promises that were made, and these weapons were a part of that promise. And these little ribbons and things that hang off of them are part of that initial contract. This is a very cool thing, and you haven't seen it for a long time. The last time I think you would have saw this was there were different clerics that were doing this on different soldiers at the foot of the Tyr Mountains after the Great War between the Draken and the other mortals of the realm. And you would have saw a few of these been bestowed upon great people and people of worth that they couldn't afford to lose. And you see those ribbons hanging on several of these weapons along the side, and then you hear a very gruff, almost sad voice speak as if it's been staring at you for the last few minutes as you've been taking this in. It says in a very deep voice, "I take it you've seen those before."
I would look at him very solemnly and say, yes, but not in a very, very long time. And I would I would ask if if there's any stories or anything that he could share with me about any of these weapons.
He gives you a long look. Now I want to describe Tavaster to those that have not been privy to this. When I was thinking about a dwarf and who I wanted to play this character, is Josh Brolin all day. And the version of this character I want you to envision is that he is a dwarf that does not have a mustache, but has a short beard that has two braids going down the side and just a tuft of hair on his chin. His hair is steel colored, almost like the color of steel. It's a very hard gray. And he has the deep lines that Josh Brolin has in his face, and he always looks solemn. And his voice sounds kind of like Thanos's from the Avengers movies. And I want you to think about, this is the voice that Thanos uses when he is talking about his past. When he's talking about the plan of Titan and what he feels he must do, the solemn version of Thanos. The Thanos you see that loses, spoilers, that loses his head in the last movie. That's the voice of Tavaster. And Ron's like, son of a bitch! I quit.
Oh.
D&D sucks.
Funny story. I did that to one of my my kids, my wife and I saw Logan when it first came out, and we were talking about it, and I didn't realize one of my kids was in the next room over, and
shit.
I ruined the ending, and he was like, "What?"
Dude, Logan was great, wasn't it? Though, God, what a well done
amazing movie.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
It's everything we need. Same reason why I like D&D. It takes something that I liked when I was younger and matures it and makes it suit us in this later part of our life. You know what I mean? When we need more substance, we just don't want silly shit. We want something that we can sink our teeth into. And Logan was that movie. They did a great job of that.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, but now that they owe us money for talking about it, that is Tavaster.
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. Brian Kynes and Ron give it 2 thumbs up. Super good movie. He wears a very humble blacksmith's apron with arms that still are muscular at his old age. His right one and his right ribs are wrapped still, healing from what transpired here that scarred the door. And as you look around for just a moment, you see that invisible like pseudo dragon fly across and land on his shoulder and become completely visible. Okay, this looks less like a dragon and more of and it's another word I don't know how to pronounce. I think it's a winged serpent that has like rainbow colored scales. I think it's called a cotrol, but it's in the Monsters Handbook. But it almost looks like more of a snake than it does a dragon, and it flies, and it has different looks to it, and he calls this thing Spriggan. And he looks up, and you hear him talking to it in a language like a person would talk to a parrot that lands on their shoulder. He's like, Spriggan. Well, you saw them come in, did you? Good to keep your eye out. He looks over at you, and he says, Bastille, let's bring him back out. There's been shadowy figures about tonight, and he's keeping guard for me. Open the door, please.
He walks over and opens the door for him.
As it does, you feel the wind rush by your head. As you hear it kind of go out beside you, and you see it wrap its tail up around that door, and it kind of looks out, its eyes blink, sticks its tongue out, tastes the air, and all of a sudden goes invisible. You can see the sign swinging outside. You know he's perched up there watching. He goes, it's awful late for you all to be out and about, especially after how busy the city's been. Bastille, he looks over, he says, before I have any more business with your friend here, we need to be introduced. And Ron, instead of answering you and answering your question, he has cut that off completely. Not rudely, but just completely. And went over to Bastille and needs to be introduced to you first before he will have a conversation with you.
Says Tavaster, owner of the Warrior's Altar, finest smith that I've ever laid eyes upon. And hopefully he'll allow me to call him friend. This is Ignatious, sage of the Avians from the City of Dreams.
Are you still donning your wings, or are they covered up, Ignatius? Ever since the nuclear battle, we never discussed it.
They are covered.
Okay.
I did pick my cloak back up and put it on. Yes.
Okay. Good to know. And Alex, if you have any questions along this, you just jump right in, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to step out.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. At this point, we'll go ahead and say goodnight to you, and I will talk to you maybe later in the week, tell you how the rest of this goes. We're going to go a little bit further here and try to do some more things. And when we pick up next, it'll be you and Dayhon on the ship, and we'll move forward from there, okay?
Alrighty.
All right, thanks, Alex. We appreciate your time. We'll see you possibly Wednesday afternoon.
Yep. See y'all later.
Later. All right. So, with that,
And
he looks.
then also he would add to that, friend of Vargas, who is son of Khan.
When you say that, you see him swell up a little bit, Ignatius. You see recognition in his eyes, and he squints at you. It's almost intimidating, but it's almost like a vet remembering a painful memory. Okay? And as he looks at you and that eye squints, he goes, "You're welcome to my shop. Pray with me that your staff does not join the other lost weapons of promise that hang on my walls." And he shuts his eyes for a minute, and he lowers his head as if he's saying a silent prayer. It's almost awkward that he goes right into it. You guys I don't know what you would do. As he puts his head down, he starts to mumble some words. He just takes a deep breath and he goes on for a few seconds. What are you guys doing while he does this?
I would be, knowing the reverence of some of the stuff hanging on his walls, I would basically be standing there kind of in silence, letting him do his thing.
Okay. Danny, yourself?
Bass would actually bow his head a little bit in his cloak.
It's over in just a few brief seconds, maybe 15. He looks back up through eyes that seem tired and weak. And he says, "It's growing quiet outside. I take it that the fighting is over." He says it almost sarcastically. He's looking at you for answers, Bastille.
Tournaments are over, but things are afoot as always. But I wanted to return a few things to you.
I'm glad that they have been able to return.
He folds that cloak up, and when he hands it to him, he says, it does stop arrows. One I was able to return, and it charged it with a lightning bolt. And it slowed a ballista. Best I could do with it. Maybe if we find an elven archer, he could do better.
He looks at you and he goes, "As important as that may be, I have another question to ask of you, now that you've worn it for some time." And he goes up to you and he walks from behind the stone bar. And he comes up close to you and he has to look up to you. And he goes, "Indulge an old man for just a moment." And he looks at you and he grabs down to a hammer on his chest, on his apron. And he holds on to it for a minute and his eyes close, and he looks at you and he puts a hand out. And he is sensing you and feeling if there's anything off about you. Okay. Ron, roll a history check, please.
24.
Well done. He is performing something to see if this armor that he has lent him has had any kind of cursed effect on him. As you guys know, in D&D, different artifacts and different magical items sometimes will have their own personality, their own will over a person and affect a person in a certain way. You realize that possessing such things is dangerous, and that him and Danny must have made some kind of pact about this particular thing that he's giving back to him. And he is checking it to make sure that Danny's soul is clean and free of anything that this may have done to him. That's what he's doing right now. Okay? So there's much more to this smith than meets the eye, possibly even more to him than what Bastille realizes. Okay? And And the phone is ringing. You're all good. Do what you gotta do, buddy. And then
I'm good.
like pause, an iPhone rings on the counter. So with that, Danny, just for the hell of it, I'd like for you to roll me a wisdom saving throw. There's a reason.
Oh shit, that's not great. 14 total.
It's for me. Okay. You feel these words in Dwarven going through your mind almost like whispers, whooshing around your head. And you seem to look at him, and when you look at him, he is intensely magnified to you, as if you are right in his face staring at him, as these words seem to leave his lips. But what you're hearing is off-put by a second, maybe even two, as you hear these words swirl around through your ears. And you feel like when you're taking a breath, the air smells cleaner, freeing. You're almost entranced, almost like underneath of a sedation of types. When you blow out your air, you hear a slight echo to what you're doing. You almost feel intoxicated, but in a pleasant way for just a moment. And then the moment passes, and before you realize it, you look back up and he's just staring at you again. His hand is down. He says, "This item's commitment to you is not yet over. Because if you were to keep this for a while, I believe it would be safe, and it and myself have deemed you worthy of having it. Or you could possibly have another item in another trial. Choice is yours." He looks over to Ignatius for a minute and gives him a knowing look as he's waiting for your response, Danny. What do you say?
As he's saying that, Bast takes his backpack off, and he says, "Let me think on that for a moment. But the armor you designed for me had a rough go. Inside
He
that
looks
pack
at
is
it,
also."
and he sighs a little bit, which for him is comedic, because you realize he's just like thinking, work. But as you're saying that, he almost interrupts your words of being like, "And the armor did justice, so you yourself didn't take the beating. Thus the cycle of armor."
And
He cocks a hat,
inside
satisfied.
is a second. He opens his cloak up, and he kind of shows him that avian armor he's wearing that was given to him. He said, "Inside is a set just like this, but the fit just a little wrong. I thought you might have the pleasure of working on it, and some raw materials in there as well."
He looks over and he says a word. It almost sounds Norse in a way. And as he does, the one forge that has radiant flame in it seems to brighten up and shine from the distance. As he says a couple more command words, and the large apparatus in the middle room begins to spin and shift, and that forge seems to come to the front. And out of the actual the furnace of the radiant flames, on some kind of device, rolls out an anvil that is cherry red and white, where it has been inside of this forge, heating up the same time it lays forward. And he looks at it.
Best says, unless you're excited to start on this rare material, I've cost you enough recently. I don't want you to."
He holds his hand up and he says, "In my wisdom of years, I try not to get excited about much of anything anymore, Bastille." And he says, "But if you're asking if I look forward to this, that I do." And he smiles, he goes, "Because I'll tell you now, this armor's seen worse days than the ones that you've brought it." And he looks over at Ignatius with a knowing look. Okay. And he says, to answer your question from earlier, he says to tell the story of a person's life is only okay if the person deems it fit to share their life with you. And sadly, I can tell you the story of several on that wall, for there is no life left there to give you permission. And he goes, if a story is what you seek, I'll share one with you. And he goes, but learn from it and try not to repeat the same mistakes. He gives you a knowing nod, Ignatious. And he looks at your back for just a minute. He looks over at Bastille and he says, you can set that up on the counter. That's what he says to you. He goes, and whatever you see fit and how much effort you wish for me to put into it, leave that beside it as well. I'll leave it to you. You know this shop doesn't run for wealth.
So if you remember, there was recently a time that he come across some platinum.
I do remember.
He's got 19 of them. He's going to put 10 platinum under that.
Okay. Wow. As you do that, normally he is stone-faced and holds his composure very, very well. As you lay that up on that counter, he puts his hand over top of that and looks at you a long time. He goes, you don't owe me that. I've been through worse.
If I'd been faster, you wouldn't have been through that one.
And if I'd have been smarter, I'd have kept the door closed.
And then that slave crown would still be in the world.
If this makes your conscience any better, I'll keep it for now. But don't bring money back in here the next time you come. I have what I need.
We each do our part, and I'm good at finding coin.
He says, and I'm good at saving lives. He goes over and he looks to the wall and he looks to it and he looks at a long time with his hands on his hips, Ignatius. He looks up and down the wall and he says, no, there's something else you need. Something else you need to see. He looks at you with a very knowing look, Ignatius, and this is going to be very interesting to you. Okay? This is fantastic, and this is going to get to happen. He goes down into a box down below all this and unlocks it with some keys that he has on his actual person. As he opens up the box, you smell something very familiar, Ignatius. It smells like the open sky. It smells like winds of fresh alpine peaks. It smells somewhat like home. And from it, he pulls out something that you can't believe he has. This, and you know this automatically, because this is something that is going to trigger a past memory for you. Okay? You see a Griffgen war claw, and you're stunned by it. And it has a white ribbon on it as well. Okay? He lays it down upon the counter. And so we can still get to some other things, I will give you a description of what this triggers in you, Ignatius. Okay? You know that the three deity beings of Ulran, which is Dwarven, Terra, Leviathan, and Deneroth. Of course, Deneroth is deceased. You know that every so many ages, they take on a mortal form and meet to discuss whose turn it is to slumber, the state of their provinces that they're over, what they are overseeing, how they are seeing the world change, and how this dreamlike state that the world is in, how it is evolving, and how it is coming to fruition. Fruition. Is it fruition? What do you think, Danny?
Fruition and our
Persuado dragon. Exactly. So there's that. But you know the word I mean.
Yeah.
And things happen. And when these beings meet, they are mortal for a time. When the great dragon Dwarven changes and the great celestial creature of nature meets and the great serpent meets in each human forms, you know that there is a love triangle between several of them, Ron. We've talked about this briefly outside of game, but your character has studied these things. At one point, when you were probably that of maybe a 40 or 50-year-old in human years, when you looked about that age, you were given the task of teaching the avian language to 3 individuals. Because these individuals that showed up to the mountain peaks and were saved by Vargas and some of the other Blackwing guards years ago at a very young age were unable to speak an avian language. These 3 beings were considered the Griffgen, Grifgen. And from what that woman, the head of the Order of the Stars, what you were told is they were the children of Dwarven and Terra. That they had born children. And these were the only 3 left in existence. These 3 individuals, there was one young female of it named Aurora. There was one young to middle-aged man by the name of Draven. And there was one older one of the 3, and his name was Orion. He seemed to be the protector of the other 2. You spent weeks with them. They stayed cloaked and hooded the entire time, but you, of a very handful, very few people, know what they truly look like and how rare they actually were. They looked like a mix. They looked like Griffin-infused people, humanoid, gallant, beautiful creatures that had feathers for hair like the original angels. Not like yours, which only has a few in it because of your distant relation to angels in your race, but they had the actual feathers for hair and they lined around their neck like a collar. Very chiseled features, very handsome, very beautiful. Their bodies were covered with a light fur, that just like a griffin has. Their arms and legs dragon scaled. The female of the 3 had wings. It seems like it's a racial trait that they have. Whereas the 2 males had bone claws that protruded from their elbows and their fists that they could call upon. They were a humanoid race that you had never ever imagined was possible. That can only be created from the union of these great deities, this Dwarven and this Terra. Okay? As you taught them the language over the series of 2 to 3 weeks, you found out their sad story. You found out that Draven, the middle-aged man of the 3, was next to be the leader of their tribe. and was going through a ritual to take that ascension. Do you need a break, buddy? Or are you okay?
Yeah, I need 1 minute.
Go ahead, buddy. It's all good.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, pretty neat, right, Danny? Did you realize I was going to pull this one out today?
No idea that he was going to go with that.
And this will help lead into some of the other things we've discussed with the Hunters Guild and who you know is overwatching that. This is going to be neat, and this makes perfect sense because, yeah, I won't say any spoilers for anybody here. Ron will be back in just a minute. We'll keep discussing some things, Danny. Folks watching at home, there are certain things that me and Danny discuss about the world and the way it evolves and the way things happen here. I try to run these things by him so we can get a good two-sided opinion on things without spoiling too much of him. And this race of creature is something that we had created, gosh, what was I, 15, 16 years old? We were kids. And it was something that was so interesting that we wanted to evolve it and put it through this evolution where we could use it in today's game. And there's a very unique, very special place for this. I think this will. I think he's going to enjoy this knowledge. And the cool thing is, Ignatious in the Avian City has been through so many things. He saw the original. He's that old. He saw the original war event against the Draken, which in D&D terms they are very similar to the Dragonborn. But I'd come up literally with the Draken years and years before any Dragonborn talk was done in 5e, which is cool. I'm glad they did it, but I'm like, damn it. Like, remember I had that fail-a-day character named Kamari? And then like 3 years later, Final Fantasy came out with this cat person named Kamari in Final Fantasy X. I was like, son of a bitch. It's like, those kind of things happen. So, you know, it's all good. But
well, at least Final Fantasy spelled it wrong.
They different than I did. I'm the one probably spelled it wrong. They, you know, they probably did it right. So.
Oh no, you spelled it first. That means you got it right.
Is that what it is? Yeah, I created the name. Yeah, I'm sure that was me. Right on. But no, these characters. This is going to be real interesting how this unfolds, Danny. Hopefully, we can get through this here and then move on. But if we don't, this is just great. This is part of what we do. So, yeah. What's
if
up?
you want to run through while we're waiting on Ron, if you want to run through Bast and him interacting here with the cloak, I know what Bast is going to do.
Okay, so let's do that. So he goes through this description of what happens here. I'll explain to him where the claw came from and things like that when he comes back. As far as you've taken this other suit of armor that was given to you by the Avians, by the Black Wing Guard, and by Vargas and some of the other guys he had working for him in the Guard. And they give them to you freely. And with him having the Radiant Forge there as part of this device, you're pretty sure he can handle doing something with it. And from that's the most excited you've ever seen Tavaster about anything, Danny. Okay, now as far as the cloak, there's not much more of a conversation that needs to go on there. He has that, he's pretty much laid that out for you.
Yeah. As far as whether he's going to take that or another item, though, he'll tell him, you know, my friend Dayhon said that he had to master standing on one leg before he started kicking. So if there's more to learn from the cloak, I'll keep it.
Okay. We'll get to that in a minute. Ron, I'll finish with you. Okay.
All right.
I'll finish with you. Are you still good till about 9:45?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I just wanted to check. It's all good, man. Okay. So
yeah, wife just couldn't find something, so I had to help her.
Hey, I get it, man. I get it. So do you remember any of me telling you this story prior, like any of the story of the Griffgen or any of that stuff before?
No.
Okay,
no.
so this is all new.
It's all new to me.
Okay, cool. This is good. Okay.
Furiously taking notes.
I know, and I'm trying to pace it. And this is something I have deeply memorized, because this is something that we went through years ago that I'm rehashing for this. So as he Well, this is all your memory of it. This isn't anyone telling you this.
Right.
You found out the fate of these creatures and why there are only 3 left. And the one that picked up on the language the fastest was Draven, which was practically the young prince of the Griffgen. In his own words, in a very bad accent, because he's barely learned the language that you've taught him in this time, he speaks in a way of superstition and believing in ancient things in a primitive way, not tainted by man at all. Like they have been isolated wherever they have been from. They lived in a place called Redstone, which was an island that, the best you can gather, was far to the west, below the islands of the Starlit Peaks. The Starlit Peaks is a place of high magic, and you have never traveled there, nor do you have anything from there. It is very far across the ocean to the west. And some place below that, in a part of the sea that is rarely traveled, were the islands of Redstone. And you can almost compare it to like a Hawaii-like thing, only smaller. Because of the love triangle that you knew in the back of your head, we have talked about that, between Leviathan, Terra, and Dwarven. Leviathan wanted to be the love interest of Terra, but instead, Terra selected Dwarven. Okay, Terra and Dwarven's offspring of one of their meetings are these Griffgen, this race. So automatically, Leviathan loathes them. And it turns out that Orion, the elder of these 3, did battle with Leviathan, as hundreds of other Griffgen warriors did. And he has a set of armor that is made out of the blue-green scales of actually Leviathan. And he has a spear called Leviathan's End, that when he was battling the creature, you find out he actually pulled from the back of Leviathan, because Leviathan has ancient weapons that have been embedded in him over the eons of years by doing battles with different generations of mortals over time and time again of the world rewriting itself. He literally has things stuck in him from where he's done battle so many times before. Okay, and Orion has an actual spear pulled from him and has some of his scales used to make a mantle of armor that he wears. Leviathan attacked Redstone from deep beneath the ocean's surface, causing volcanoes to erupt on the island and utterly destroy it. As the hundreds of Griffgen fought from the beaches and the sides, and the Griffgen mages, females, flew out and tried to defeat the creature. It was unstoppable. And the volcanoes erupted, and almost everyone perished. You remember Vargas telling you one of the saddest things he ever saw was Orion, or Orion, the oldest of the 3, floating in the wake amongst dead bodies and vegetation and stuff, floating where this island once stood, where him and a group of Blackwing guards went out to find any survivors of this legendary and mythical place. And they saw Orion holding in his arms, floating unconscious, the lifeless bodies of Draven and Aurora. And when the Avians, the Darkwing Guards, came down to rescue them, Orion yelled at them and roared at them with feral might, because he thought it was angels coming to take them away to the other side. He thought that the Blackwing Guard were angels coming to take them because they were dead. That's how primitive-minded they were. When Vargas told you this story years ago, it was heartbreaking. It's one of the hardest things he's ever had to do. You learn about all these different legends as you're trying to talk them through. One morning, you get up to give them class, and they're gone. You don't know what to do. You panic. You go to Vargas, and Vargas can't tell you exactly what happened. But he says to you, he says that the eldest one of their kind says that they have their own traditions and they are not part of this. They have to rebuild, and they need to go talk to their parents. That is the last any three of them have ever been seen. And now you're seeing what is a ceremonial battle claw of one, and you know this was owned by the oldest one, which was Orion. And what they do is their arms, they have dragon claws that can come out of their arms. And you can't help but make a Wolverine reference to this, but what they're able to do is from their elbows and 3 spots here on their forearm bone, and one large massive bone comes out of their fist about this far, is they can erupt dragon-like claws to come out of their elbows, their forearms, and their fists when they are doing battle. But they rarely do it. Usually instead of doing that, they try to keep themselves more calm and understood and use these battle claws that are ornamental, that they wear bound to their own arms like gauntlets. This is one of those. Okay? And it has the white ribbon with the etching on it. When he pulls that out and gives you a long look, when Tavaster pulls that out, lays it on the counter, and all these memories come flooding back to you, the older dwarf just looks at you and studies you. And he says to you in a whispered voice, exactly how old are you?
I would take a deep breath and I would say, I'm old enough to know what this is and who it belonged to.
He looks at you. He buttons his lip up and holds his chin up mightily. And he comes in close to you. And he says to you, he's here. And he needs a friend more than ever. He will find you. But look for him. He says, I do not wish to complete the ribbon of this device. You understand?
I do.
He takes the ribbon off, pulls it, and hands it to you. He doesn't say any words and just gives you one of those and places it in your hand and covers it up with his other hand and pushes your hand back towards you. Okay? He says, when you've given that back to its owner, we can talk about that staff of yours. You can do your part to help me set the world right, and then I can do my part to help you through it. That's how the warrior's altar works. And Danny's grinning because Danny's went through similar shit too. He has a very odd way that he does things, but it works out pretty well. So, do you say anything in response to that, Ignatius?
At first, I kind of, I guess I would sound relieved and say, you know, he's alive and he's here.
He looks at you and he says, and needs to remain unseen.
I would, I tell him that I absolutely understand the necessity of that. And I've held his secret before, and I'll keep his secret again.
He says to you a short phrase, but he says it to you in the Griffgen language, the one that you had to interpret and break down in order to teach them yours. And it is that saying that you avians give to each other all the time, which was what again, Ron?
Spare no feather for the weak.
He says that to you in an old Griffgen tongue language. That would be pretty shocking to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say it back to him, but I'm not sure if I would say it back in the Griffgen or in common, seeing as, you know, the little bit of shock.
Okay. Danny, you're seeing all this go on and you don't know. For the first time, Ignatius is doing shit that has you out of the loop, sir. And you are just, well, what are you doing, Danny? Let's just ask you.
Bast would just look around like this is how it's supposed to be, because he doesn't like anyone to think they unsettle him.
Because any rogue loves to play it cool. Yes, I know. You've got the Fonzie gene. You're good. Right? Okay. So, with that, is there anything you would like to talk to or ask Tavaster before you go ahead and make your way on up to the higher level of the city and towards the outside of the gates of the Hawk's Nest, which is what they call where the actual king's domain is at the top?
I guess I would ask him if he knows of if the owner of that had any companions with him, or any more of his kind had been seen with him.
Because it is part of his sorrow that he does not, although I don't know the conditions.
All right. I would thank him very much and tell him that I will find and return the ribbon.
He just nods. And he turns over and he begins discussing quietly some things with Danny that has to do with his cloak and the avian armor that he has brought him and what their plans are for that. So briefly, what is it you wish to convey to Tavaster? How would you like, what are you wanting done here exactly, Danny?
As far as the armor goes, like the set that he's wearing now is still cut like the avian riders wear. He's just looking for Tavaster to make it bend the way his other armor did. Put the joints in the right places so that he can move more freely as a rogue.
Okay. He looks at you, and you have a suit of this on already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your suit that you have on is pretty badly damaged from the last fight you were in, correct?
No, the suit I've got on because I didn't actually take too much damage in that fight against the behemoth. Actually, I can look at that real quick. I've got that sheet.
I thought you got hurt pretty bad. I thought he messed you up pretty good with it on. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I got healed pretty well.
Yeah, but I mean armor doesn't get healed. You do.
Right. Bast took. Dayhon got smoked on his armor points.
Yeah.
Bast did pretty well. He only had about 10 armor points come off.
Okay, that's cool then. Okay, good. Okay. So he says that he will keep that. And he tells you that if you, so you're wanting to keep the cloak for a little bit longer. Okay. So he
rather than doing a new trial, he's the way he conveys it is his friend Drayden says that one must master standing on one leg before he can properly kick with the other one.
Nicely done, which is, that's cool. Okay. So he says to you that there is more unseen from this garment that you possess. He goes, when you believe your soul is ready to take on whatever it may have in store for you, you're worthy of finding it. Come to me when that time is right. He says, I have some work to do. And he goes, Avian, you are welcome here. And I hope you both the best. But it's late. And I have a lot of things to do. He goes, I hope to see you again. And I hope what I've given you is harmed more than its wear. He cops half of a grin and nods and turns and grabs your armor and is looking at it and scratching his head and pondering and looking at some things on it and stuff, as you see his finger etching out the engraving of feathers and things on its sides, and says in a deep voice underneath, it's been a long time, and walks back into the depths of the shop around the apparatus. What are you two doing?
So we're walking out. I would say the armor I was wearing before, he forged that. And I look up as we're passing through, and I nod at where I know Spriggan will be.
Okay. You see the eyes flash, the tongue kind of comes out, and it rocks a little bit excitedly, and comes down and lands on your shoulder briefly, Danny, and smells around you, and kind of sniffs around you, and says some words like that, and this kind of goes back up into a spiral, passing the sign and darting into a window on the upper level of this place, and going in, the window slams shut behind it, sending a little bit of snow down off the window ledge down on top of you guys. The sign is just hanging like this, swinging. What are you doing, Ron?
I would be probably holding that ribbon in my hand, kind of running it, my fingers over it in my hand, and looking around the city, kind of thinking, how, unbelievable that potentially Orion's in that city.
Yeah. Yep.
That was kind of a big, holy crap moment.
Yeah, and there's reasons for all that. You'll see. So it'll be fun. Nothing mind altering there, anything hugely changing as what we've had lately. I'm not going to try to throw too many new story arcs at you guys, but that's one that was already part of something you're working on. I'll just give you that so you're interested. Okay.
All right.
So with that, Bass would look over to him and say, if we take the streets, it's going to be a long time getting back to where we need to be to meet Rainlore. If you break out those wings, or you can try to keep up with me on the rooftops, either way. But I got a feeling if you chase me on the rooftops, you're going to need those wings. It'll keep us out of trouble, and you'll get a different view of the city.
I would nod my head and pull my cloak off and tuck it into my sack, and kind of stretch the wings and get ready to follow him. As he crosses the rooftops, I will fly overhead.
Okay. So, with that being said, Danny jumps up the very first little pile of goods and whatnot that may be leaning against some shop or whatnot as he leaves blowing snow in his wake, and jumps to one of the rooftops in which he seems extremely nimble and familiar, Ignatius. As your wings flap, and remember, you feel more mighty here as the atmosphere is thicker here than it was up in your home. And you feel like your wings grab onto a lot more, and you're propelled a lot more than before. It's a nice feeling of strength that you have being in these low lands. With that, we can conclude tonight's if you want to, or we can go a little bit further into your meeting at the top of the city. What would you guys like to do? $9:40.
I'd say for me, probably wrap it up. I do have to get up early.
Okay. So
Seems like a nice clean spot to.
it does. It's going to be nice. Yeah. So we'll say at that moment, Danny, you're going to begin going over rooftops and making your way towards one of the higher parts of the city, the part that you rarely ever go to. Ignatius will follow in your wake. Just for the hell of it, before we stop, roll me a dexterity check, Danny, to see how well you do. It is snowing. You're ready for this number, Ignatius.
Yeah.
Did you roll a natural 20?
Yeah.
Anytime, okay, folks, watching this video, anytime the magically blessed Danny McGuffey moves the shit, you know it's a 20, because he wants the same approval. Ron, just for shits and giggles, we're going to say that Danny is like you're trying to catch a chicken in a farmyard. He is freaking doing his shit. Roll me a d20 and see how you fare keeping up with him.
All right. Any particular modifiers?
Just your dexterity bonuses and a 1d20.
13.
Several times looking back, Danny, you would see him awkwardly trying to fly up and keep up with you. But at the same time, he can fly a shitload faster than you can go across rooftops. So this works out pretty well. But you're impressed, Ron, with a natural 20. It's the way he handles these snow-covered rooftops on your way to the gate. You have probably another half hour or 45 minutes left before you are supposed to meet this guide. And whatever you want to do with that time up there, I encourage you guys to think about that before the next session. Are you guys good for this coming Wednesday?
Yes.
Should be.
The following Saturday, I am not.
Okay.
Having a small Halloween get together at my house with some family. So.
And I tell you what, to tell you the truth, I think we're going to start doing this on Sundays from now on. It seems to work out better for everybody. So if that's okay, we'll try to do this between 6 and 7 o'clock next Sunday as well.
Yeah, closer to
here.
Closer to 6:37 for me. I drive my kids back to college on Sundays, so
okay.
That's usually in the afternoon is when they want to go back. So.
All right. How about you, Danny? How you doing on it?
That should be good with me.
Okay. Buddy.
Yeah, and Sunday actually works a lot better than Saturdays for me. Okay. The family usually has a lot planned on the weekends, on Fridays and Saturdays.
I get it. And like I say, we have to live our lives. So we'll do that, man. And thanks tonight. This was good. I know sometimes we don't get very far, but there's a lot of stuff packed into what we do. But once again, good role playing. It's a good time. And as always, Danny, I will bullshit with you for a little bit after this. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. And then I will say my goodbyes to you guys. So for everyone watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if there's something you don't quite understand. If you have questions about our world or any of our characters, I love talking about that. So just leave a comment below. And we'll see you next time we play. Later.